Assalamu alaikum class. Yesterday we had a lecture on the first chapter of functional English. Today we are going to have the practice of self-test of that chapter actually. That is on page number 12 of your textbook. Fine. There are two questions on this in the self-test with the name of self-test number 3. Question number 1 is about identification of the exact part of speech, underlined part of speech. Where there is smoke, there is fire. Where has been asked, where there is smoke, there is fire. You have been asked to identify what actually this where is. So we are going to find out that, or we have already read that there are two types of conjunctions which are being used in the structure classification of sentences. They are the coordinate conjunctions, and the other is called subordinate conjunctions. Here we find out that this where has been used to join both these clauses. So this where is belong to the subordinate type of conjunction. Number B. Noman travels to Dubai frequently. Noman travels to Dubai frequently. Frequently has been underlined. Fine. Now we have to find out this. What is this word frequently? Noman is a noun, travels is a verb, to is a preposition, Dubai is proper noun, and this word frequently, that is being used as adverb. We have already read in chapter number 1 and lecture number 1 that adverb is a word which adds to the quality of a verb. Fine. So this is what frequently is doing here. It is actually adding to this the quality of this verb, that this traveling has been done frequently. Fine. Now we move on to sentence number C. It has been years since I saw you last. It has been years since I saw you last. Since has been, again since is being used as a conjunction here. It has been years, it is a clause, it is another clause, and since has been used as a conjunction. What does the conjunction do? As we have already read, that conjunction is a word which actually joins two clauses. So these are two clauses, and the word conjunction has been used as a connective. In other words, conjunction is also known as connective. Fine. We can also ask it the subordinate conjunction. Now the other is number D. The local train to Landi always runs late on Sundays. The local train to Landi always travels always runs late on Sunday. Always runs late on Sunday. Here the word to has been underlined to be find out. Fine. So to, as we have already read, a part of speech with the name as preposition. So this to actually is being used as preposition in this sentence. Now the other sentence is E. The birds call blend into a sweet song. The birds call blend into a sweet song. Here sweet has been underlined. We have read that a word which qualifies a noun is known as adjective. So song is a noun, and this word sweet actually is contributing to the meaning of that noun. So it is called as adjective. Have you heard anything new? Number F. Have you heard anything new? Here you are asked to find out the word new. This word actually new is contributing to the meaning of anything. Anything is a noun. All the things in the word, they are known as noun. So this is a noun, and this word is qualifying this noun. Anything new, it is specifying. So this is called as adjective. G. Please give me the pair of scissors. Please give me the pair of scissors. Here scissors has been underlined. This scissors actually is a common noun. In chapter number 4, we will be reading about different kinds of noun. In this chapter, we actually have done only the introduction to different part of speech. In chapter number 4, actually we'll be having detailed kinds of different nouns. Now we are left with the last identification, that is called as H. Where have you placed the new cupboard? Where have you placed the new cupboard? This cupboard has been again underlined. This is called noun. Again, it is a noun. So actually this exercise was identification of different parts of speech, and sometimes these words were different and we were identifying them. Now in the second question, we are actually going to point out that the word is the same and the roles it has been playing, it is different. So we move on to question number 2 of self-test number 3. This is all for your practice, what you have read in chapter number 1. Question number 2. Here again, actually this question is asking you to for the identification of parts of speech, but the only difference is this, that the word is the same, but it is playing different role. In sentence number 1, it is one of the aim of fast is to think of poor people who do not have sufficient food to eat. One of the aim of fast is to think of poor people who do not have sufficient to eat, sufficient food to eat actually. Here the examiner has actually asked the word fast, fine, or the writer. Now we have to find out what this fast is playing the role in this sentence. One of the aim of fast. Fast here is a noun. One of the aim of fast is to think of poor people who do not have sufficient food to eat. Now in sentence number B, Imran is a fast runner. Here again fast has been underlined, but here fast is not playing the role of a noun. Actually runner is a noun, and this fast actually is contributing to the quality of that noun. That is called as adjective. Now we move on to C. Shoaib can run fast. Shoaib can run fast. Again we are being asked to find out the word fast, but here the fast is playing different roles from the above two qualifications. Here Shoaib is a noun, can is a verb, run, modal verb, run is a verb, and this fast is contributing to this action verb run. So this is being used as adverb. Now we are left with the last sentence, that is called number D. In Ramzan, Muslims are expected to fast from dawn to sunset. In Ramadan, Muslims are expected to fast from dawn to sunset, from sunrise to sunset. Fine. Here again the word to fast has been underlined, and we are asked to identify this verb. Now we'll see what actually this verb is contributing in this sentence. Actually it is to fast actually is being used here as infinitive. Infinitive actually is one of the form of a verb that is being used as noun in many of the sentences. Fine. This verb actually we are going to see in detail in chapter number 2. This was all the practice of chapter number 1. Fine. Here we have actually practiced different parts of speech which we have read and are same word as different parts of speech. Now we move on to chapter number 2. This was all the practice of chapter number 1. If you want to have a more practice, you can always have the book of Functional English, practice kit of Functional English from Rice School of Accountancy. Okay. Now we move on to chapter number 2 actually. Chapter number 2 is in detail of verb, and verb being the important and basic inevitable part of a sentence. As we have read in chapter number 1, that sentence is a group of words which makes which is actually combination of 3 words, that is called subject, verb and object. And in those 3 words, verb actually is being the inevitable and unavoidable. Inevitable and unavoidable part of a sentence. We cannot have a sentence without the participation of verb, and verb is such a strong word in a sentence that it only can play the role of a sentence. Now we move on to different kinds. Actually this chapter number 2, actually this chapter is all about verb, and it is giving a deep insight into different kinds of verb. Now we start with the definition of verb. What actually is a verb? If we start with the definition, we come to know that verb is a word which performs 3 actions in a sentence. That is called, number 1 is called as it is action, number 2 is called state, and number 3 is called occurrence. It can perform at the same time 3 actions in a sentence. By action we move, that we have verb in the form of actions. He moves. Here move is a verb, and that is showing the action of the subject. State. He is a player. He is a player. Here is being the verb showing the state of the subject. Occurrence. He is in the ground. Here is showing the presence of a subject. Fine. This was all with the definition of the verb. Now we move on to different kinds of verbs. You can always call them different types of verbs or different kinds of verbs. Fine. We are going to have all these types of verbs in a series. In your book in chapter number 2, actually they have been described haphazardly. Fine. No, but we are going to have them in a symmetry so that we can have a clear picture of the verb. Let's start from the basic two. A verb is basically divided into two subkinds. One of them is called as main verb and the other is called as auxiliary verb. Auxiliary verb is also named as helping verb and it is also known as assisting verb. Those who are helpful to the main verbs. Fine. This main verb actually is an action verb. Helping or auxiliary verb is again subdivided into two types. That is called as primary helping verb and the other is named as modal helping verb. What do we mean by primary helping verb? Primary helping verb actually they add or involve is, am, are, was, were, and by modal helping verb we have a long series of them. Now we discuss in detail first the primary helping verbs. Primary helping verb actually have very important role in the structuring of a sentence. We can always have in detail the primary helping verbs. That is called as am, are, was, were, do, does, did, has, have, had. They are all called as primary helping verb. Fine. The main function of these primary helping verb is to assist the main verb. But sometimes if assistant is not there, of course the main verb is not there, the assistant becomes the main verb. For example, he is going to Karachi. Here going is the main action verb and is assisting this verb. He is a traveler. Here we do not find any action verb or main verb. We only find this helping verb in a sentence and this helping verb actually is playing the role of the main verb. So we see actually primary helping verb mainly assist the main verb, but at the same time they can also be the main verb in some of the sentences. This was all with the primary helping verb. Now we move on to other kinds of the verb. They are called as, we will see in detail their uses one by one. Now we move on to modal verbs actually. Modal verbs. That includes can, could, may, might, will, would, shall, should, need to, ought to, dare, and must. This is a series of modal verbs. But you always keep in mind that modal verbs actually not assist the main verb. Fine? They actually have their own meanings and they contribute their own meaning in a sentence. For example, he can perform well. Here perform is the main verb and can is contributing its own meaning in a sentence, that is called as can. All the modal verbs actually have their own meanings, fine, which they do contribute in a sentence. One by one we will see that what actually they contribute in a sentence, or what is their basic perspective. If we consider can contribute the meaning of ability, a thing which a person can have at a time. For example, he can solve some. On the other hand, could is a word which shows an ability which we had in our past. He could run fast. Run fast when he was young. Fine? An ability which we had in our past times. Okay? Now we move on to may. May shows the meaning of possibility. May actually has got different meanings. Possibility first of all. Then we also use it for pray. We use it for permission as well. And might shows the past of may. As could showed the past of can, in the same way might showed the past of may. Possibility, pray and permission. Now one by one we see how they explore these meanings in a sentence. Number one, possibility. I can erase the other part of the sentence so that you do not mix it with this. Possibility. He may pass paper if he works hard. Here may is contributing. Pass is a actually may is contributing this to this main verb pass, and it is contributing the meaning of possibility in a sentence. Fine. Pray. May you live long. Here may is being used here as, or in other words you can say may is contributing to the meaning of pray. Permission. May I come in? Here may has different role from other two, that is called as permission. So may actually is being used as three meanings, or it explores or it identifies three meaning in a sentence. Now we move on to might. Might actually, as we have already discussed, might is the past of may. It can also have some meanings in the sentence. First of all, it showed possibility, past possibility, या past possibility in other words. Okay, fine. And the other sentence is again, we can see the use of possibility in this in a sentence. For example, he might pass exam if he worked hard. We can see from this clause of the sentence that actually it is pointing out the time frame of past. So might actually is coordinating this worked. Fine. Might is the past of may, and this worked is the past of work. So this is, both of these are in coordination to each other, and they show that we are discussing about the past times. But we can also, might is such a flexible word, we can also use it as present times. For example, I can at the same time, I can use this word for present frame as well. He might pass exam if he works hard. Okay, might actually is here, might is showing the past times, and here might is showing the present times. So we can always use the flexibility of might in the present and in the past. Now we move on to may and might and the other. Now we move on to other modal verbs, that includes will and would. You have always keep in mind that these modal verbs do not assist the main verb. Actually, they contribute their individual meaning in the sentence. Will. As we must have read in our preliminary classes that we have been using shall and will for the future forecast. Here we are going to study will. What actually will denotes in a sentence? Will actually shows or it forecasts the future. We can say future forecast. Fine. We will see in detail that what is the difference in will and shall afterwards when we will study the we will have studied the shall. Future forecast. Fine. What about its use? He will pass exam inshallah. Fine. This is here will actually is contributing to the main verb pass, and here it is showing what it is depicting or what it is contributing. It is forecasting the future. Now we move on to would. Would actually, basically, it is the past of will. Fine. For example, we have already read that could was the past of can and might was the past of may. Here we see how would contribute in a sentence. He would pass exam if he worked hard. Again, what it is showing? It is showing a possibility in our past. If he would have worked hard, he could pass exam. He would pass exams. Here it is showing an opportunity or a possibility which he had in the past times. But would is again flexible as might was. It is not only used for the past time frame. It is at the same time used for the present time frame as well. For example, he would pass exam if he works hard. In modern grammar, would is very flexible. Actually, it is replacing the will in many of the contexts. Rather, we are more comfortable in using would rather than will. I would see you tomorrow. At here would is being used in the replacement of will. Fine. Okay. Now we move on to the other modal verb, that is called must, need to, and shall. Sorry, shall and should. We are left with many. We are going to study them in the same context because their basic purpose or function is to emphasize on an action. He must work hard. Must work hard. Here must actually is an emphasis on this verb work. Fine. So must is being used as an emphasis. Fine. Whenever we are going to emphasize any of the action, we use this modal verb must. We move on to need to. He need to work hard. Here again, need to. Must was an emphasis. On the other hand, need to is a little suggestion. Like for example, we are not forcibly asked to do anything. We are being actually given in a very light manner to do something that is called, he need to work hard if he wants to pass exam. Fine. Again, that shall. Shall actually is the partner of will. Again, shall forecast the future. Shall is future, forecast the future frame. Fine. He shall visit hospital tomorrow. If we see in a very light manner, we see that shall actually is predicting our future times, that we are going to, or we have the intention to do something in our future, right? But we see that whenever shall is used, it is always thought of why will have not been used in the place of shall. So basically, we are going to analyze what is the basic difference in the use of shall and will. Both of them actually vary on their use. We are going to discuss their variation, how they are going to differ with each other, or on which particular point they discriminate with each other. We compare them, shall and will. If we see their former use, we see that shall was being used for the first person pronouns and will was being used as for the third person pronoun, or in other words, for the second person as well. It was their primary use. If we wanted to do anything, or we had the intention of doing anything, we used shall for their first person pronoun, and we used will for the third and the second person pronoun. Now their use actually is not, they are not used in this context now. Now they have their different identification, like they have their different texture for, or their different, you can say the different contexts in which they are used. In modern grammar, shall is more authoritative. And will is used for our regular intentions. For example, if I strongly intended to do anything, I am going to use shall for that. For example, he shall obey his parents. Here shall shows that strong intention of doing that. Fine. For example, shall is being used in those particular times where we are strongly emphasized, or where we are strongly intended to do anything. In that particular context, we always use shall. Fine. In other words, we can always say that for the religious and moral obligations, we always use shall. He shall say prayer 5 times a day. Say prayer 5 times a day. Here shall was being used in the context of moral obligation. And in the second sentence, shall is being used as the religious obligation. So shall is more authoritative as compared to will. On the other hand, if we have any regular intentions, we use will for that. As we have already discussed, he will go to cinema tonight. That is called as regular use of will. As far as In the same context, we also use a word that is called should. But we shouldn't always confuse that should as the past of shall. Should has no connection with shall. Should is being used as a separate modal verb, and it has got its own identification. Likewise, for example, should is used actually for a lighter tone, for a lighter suggestion. You should use darker pencil. Very light suggestion. There is no emphasis in that, the use of should. Fine. Whenever we intend to do anything, I should work hard. If any personal intentions are there, I'm going to use should for that. Work hard for this goal. For the personal or for the suggestion, whenever they are the context is very light, we are going to use should for them. And should is never, it should never be confused with the past of shall. Again, we move on to another modal verb that is called must. Must again has a strong obligation, as we have seen in shall. If we are strongly determined to suggest anything, we always use must for that. He must pay attention to his writing. To his writing. Here actually must is being used as an authoritative or strong obligation, or you can other way, or you can in other way you can call it a strong suggestion. So the must is being used here as a strong suggestion. Now we are left with need to, ought to, and dare. Now we see one by one all the last three modal verbs. First of all, need to. Again, in need to, there is a very light suggestion. Like, that was in should. Okay? It is both of them actually are equivalent in their meanings or in their tone, that they are very light in their suggestion. He need to he need to work in time. Right? Okay. The other one is called, we were left with used to. I think we have missed it in the introduction of the basic, when we were discussing all of the modal verbs. Used to. Used to is used again here. He is actually used to is basically whenever it is being used as a modal verb, that is called, we are actually habitual of something. He is used to of speaking louder. Whenever we are habitual or whenever we are in the habit of doing anything, we use used to. Fine. Again, we are left with a dare to. Sorry, ought to. Ought to. Ought to again have a very strong obligation. And it is equivalent to the status of must. It is being used in the same context as we use must. Both of them have a little bit stronger tones in their context. Fine. He ought to help his parents, or obey their parents, right? Again, here ought to is showing a stronger obligation. Now we are left with dare. Dare actually is the last modal verb and that is also being used as bare infinitive. How dare of you to call him in this way. So dare show the courage actually. And this is also a bare infinitive as we have discussed earlier. So this is all about the modal verbs. We have seen that modal verbs actually do not contribute to the or do not help to the main verb. Rather, they have their own meanings which do they contribute in the sentence, and they are used in the different contexts of a sentence. Fine. Now we move on to the other types of the verbs. They were actually from the basic two types. In the beginning, we have already discussed a verb is subdivided into two main types, that is called the main verbs and the helping verb. Main verb was action verb and helping verb was the auxiliary verb or assisting verb. Auxiliary verb and assisting verbs actually are again subdivided into two kinds. They are called as the primary helping verb or the modal helping verbs. We have discussed in detail about the use of the modal verbs. We will be having a practice exercise in the end of the chapter where if you practice it, you can always make your concept clear with that. Okay. Now we move on to other kinds of verb. Fine. That includes, first it was main verb. Let me start with the main tree or assisting verb. That is called assisting verb was again divided into primary and modal. Now beside these two basic types of verbs, we have some other types. For example, a verb can be regular, a verb can be irregular, a verb can be transitive, a verb can be intransitive at the same time. What do we mean by regular verbs? Whenever we see the regular verbs, we have to keep in mind different forms of verb, as we have already discussed in our preliminary classes. Fine. The forms of verbs. We have already read that there are three forms of the verbs, but in this CA your stream of your functional English, we see that we have been introduced with 5 forms of the verbs. Here we are not interested with the in this context, the regular, irregular, with all these 5 forms. We are just concerned with the 3 forms. We basically see that the first form is called as present, second is called as past, and the third is called as past participle. Go, went, gone. See, saw, seen. Cut, cut, cut. Okay? Fine. Now we see jump, jumped, jumped. Study, studied, and studies. We see there is an obvious difference among these 5 forms of the verbs. We can see in the first 3 forms that all these 3 forms actually, their forms are different to each other. Go is different, went is different, and gone is different. Again in the see, saw, all these forms are different. Cut, 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 cut. Fine. In the second stream, we see we have just added ed at the end of the main verb to make the past and past participle of jump. These three forms are being called as irregular verb because we do not find any regularity in their structure or in their formation. In the second context, we see that we have just added the ed in the same way with all these four forms of the verbs. Fine. We call them regular verbs. So simply we can define in the way those verbs which add ed at the end, they're called as regular verb, and those verbs which are constructed beside the addition of ed called as irregular verb. So this was all with the regular and irregular verb. Now we move on to transitive and intransitive verb, the other types, the last two types of the verbs. As the name is showing, what do we mean by transitive? Transitive means transferable, a thing which can be transmitted to other thing, transferable. That is called as transitive verb. We see, for example, with the we use it in the way he broke his leg. And intransitive verb, which is not transferable. He broke. We do not know what did he break. He played. We do not know what did he play. He broke. When a verb has object for its action to be performed on, that verb is called as transitive verb. On the other hand, a verb which do not transfer to an object, that is called as intransitive verb. So this was all with the types of the verbs. Actually, as we have already discussed, these different types have been described in the chapter haphazardly and on and off, but we have discussed them in the form of a tree or a branch or a systematic way. Fine. Now we move on to here on chapter number 20 and 21 of your functional English textbook. The different forms of the verbs have been given. Actually, they are important. Sometimes the examiner asks about a very to half marks question, what is the second form of the verb, or what it can be the what can be the third form of the verb as well. So you have to remember, keep in mind all these the types of the verbs. Fine. Or in other words, you have to learn them. And on page number 22, 23, 24, 25, 26 and 7, these all cover about the 27 up till 33. They all cover about the use of modal verbs in detail. It is more than the worth of the paper. It has been discussed in very detail. Fine. You have to read them out and you have to match it with the use which we have discussed it in the class. Fine. This one was about the use of the verb, or in other words, the types of the verb. Now we move on to chapter number 3 actually. Fine. Here